All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome everybody to our Enriching Talks, episode number 11. All right. For those of you that are new here, these are sessions and episodes that I've been doing since last year. And Alhamdulillah, it's been on different topics, different birth stories. Last month we had a mother from Kuwait sharing her story in Arabic. So it's been a wide range of topics and inspirational talks for moms. And today I am very blessed to have a very special speaker. So without further ado, I'm just going to introduce myself first, and then I'll introduce our speaker, and then we can start with our talk today. So, since there are lots of new people that are joining in to these sessions, let me start with introducing myself. My name is Hafsa-Episode. By the way, today's talk is going to be in English, but if you have any questions in Urdu or in Arabic, we will be happily able to accommodate them at the end. So, my name is Hafsa-Episode. I'm from Pakistan, living in Kuwait, working with moms globally and teaching them online birth classes, supporting them in their birth, pregnancy, birth, breastfeeding, and beyond journeys since the last 13 years it is now. So my first was a very traumatic C-section, and then I had two VBAC births, alhamdulillah, and that's what drove me into this field and enlightened my passion. And now there's been no looking back. I have been helping, this is what I do from the bottom of my heart. And what you see on the screen are my qualifications that I've done, and I'm doing some more at the moment in process, alhamdulillah. So forever a learner to be able to help the mothers of this ummah as much as possible and to make sure that they feel supported. All right. If you are on the phone, you might want to rotate the phone to be able to see the slides a bit bigger. Or you could tap on the image and so forth. All right. I hope that helps. Okay. Now, why did I start these talks? What was the mission, vision behind it? Because like I said, I teach birth classes, I teach online classes, and I felt that, okay, those are my paid services, moms who dedicate, and then I'm committed with them. But I felt like I needed to do more for the community. So I started this series of talks, birth stories. I've done an infant loss session. I've done different birth stories in different languages. I've done talks on postpartum, Ramadan, different ones, different scattered topics related to whoever I find inspiring and whoever is available to be part of my talks as well. So it is not your usual talk show. We are here to inspire each other, to motivate each other, to support, laugh together, cry together, empower each other, give the importance of support, importance of education. So basically the mission, major word I would use is sisterhood. The other word would be support and empowerment in this journey into motherhood and parenthood, inshallah. So that's my mission and vision. Now, I want to introduce our speaker of today, who is Jahan Zuberi. Now, I will go a little bit back into history. How I got to know about Jahan is when I started to work with mamas in Pakistan, and I got to know that there is this amazing midwife. Jahan was in Pakistan at that time. And we kind of connected. Some of the moms had, the ones that took classes with me went ahead and had amazing births with her. And we kind of created this bond. I haven't ever met her in person. There were times where our paths could have crossed, but we never really got a chance to meet in person. So Jahan is a certified professional midwife, and I'm gonna, after I introduce her, I'm gonna let her introduce herself as well. And I was I was getting lots of questions here and there about home births, and since Jahan is no more there, I wasn't sure how I wanted to go about this home birth topic. So I was like, let me get her on board and just help. Let's discuss this and help give the parents the guidance to make the safe choice of when it comes to home births anywhere in the world, right? Depends on your care provider, depends on where you are and what you're thinking through when it comes to making the safe choice, whether it's a home birth and even if it is trying for an autonomous birth in a hospital as well. So, Jahan, with all your lots of, mashallah, experience and lots of, I mean, so many people already know you. So can I give the mic to you and you go ahead with starting to introduce yourself before I ask you questions?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Hafsa. And yeah, for those who are just joining, who might just be like meeting Hafsa. So for the first time, I really want to say that Hafsa has been doing amazing, incredible work for women in Pakistan and also, like as she said, globally. And yeah, I don't want her to at all undersell herself because she is such an incredible support and gives lots of love and guidance to moms. And yeah, very grateful for the work that you do and grateful that I can be yeah, doing this session with you. Like Hafsa said, I am a certified professional midwife. So I did my training here in the United States, working as a home birth midwife and also working in a birth center. I think as we go through the talk today, we'll kind of talk a little bit more about that. And then I spent 5 years in Pakistan where I was helping train midwives, setting up birth centers, doing flood relief work, working on an island, and then all alongside, I was taking clients who often had completed childbirth education with Hafsa and were really motivated to be birthing in the comfort of their home. So I've got a wide range of an experience, and yeah, excited for this conversation today.
Amazing. Thank you so much. You well, while you were there and while the moms that wanted those home births, I wouldn't think a second that I would be like, okay, alhamdulillah, we have a amazing certified midwife who is taking the birth the way I wanted mamas to take. And we felt like on the same page, and that felt the most important thing. So I'm going to start with my first question. So what exactly is a home birth? Because I feel like there's lots of misconceptions out there. And how would it differ from a hospital or a birth center?
Yeah, absolutely. So home birth, I think there's even within home birth, there can be kind of some different ways that people go about that. So you can have intentional home births, you can have accidental home births because babies come really quickly. And some people, when choosing a home birth, they will choose to birth with a care provider, or they might choose to birth just with their husband or a family member. So as a midwife, I've specialized in home birth or out of hospital birth. And I would say that home birth differs from hospital birth. It's typically, I would say that uh, how midwifery philosophy differs from obstetrics. And so off we are trained to really believe and support physiological birth. So our care is rooted in informed choice, in respecting the autonomy of our clients and their wishes. Um, as we know with obstetrics, it's, their training is really about intervention. And when you need those interventions, they are wonderful and we welcome them. But I would say that typically our philosophy is quite different. So when someone's choosing to birth at home with a midwife, per se, they're often wanting to do things a little bit more slower on their time. They want to be in the comfort of their home. They might want the family around them. And sometimes when you're going into a hospital, these things are limited. Freedom of like movement and getting to eat food. These things are also, available at home and sometimes not in the hospital setting. In the birth center birth, it is really I think it's really dependent on where you are in the world. So I've worked at birth centers that are independent birth centers. They're freestanding, so they're not connected to a hospital, but having good relationships with hospitals so we can transfer if needed. You'll also have birth centers that are attached to the hospital and they might be staffed with nurse midwives or just kind of like in a separate wing of the hospital. But again, they might have like a birth tubs or they've kind of, it's like a maybe glamorized um hospital to make it seem like more comforting. My experience of doing home birth and birth center as a midwife, of course, my skill set doesn't change across those settings. And the tools that I would have at both those settings, if it is having medication or what I would need for doing a neonatal resuscitation, like those things are the same. Birth center births, depending on where you're at, There might just be more like regulation. So it might be that somebody couldn't go past 42 weeks, or stricter requirements for who is allowed to birth at a birth center versus if somebody was choosing to birth at home.
Right. Yep, that makes sense. And of course, the birth center situation isn't available in all countries as well. So depending on
Yeah.
where they are. So that brings me to my next question. Who is considered like a good candidate for a home birth? Do you guys have like a criteria like for a safe home birth? And who would you advise against it?
Yeah, so absolutely, we have a criteria. I would say before like talking about the kind of like physical criteria that we look for, is one of the most important things for me and when working with a client is trust. One, that there's a mutual trusting relationship between myself and the client, but also that that client and their family who's going to be present with them at the birth is really trusting of birth, trusting of the process, and trusting like in their decision to choose out of hospital birth. Sometimes if the I have a client who they're really motivated, but the family is not supportive, that itself can make a situation become dangerous if we say if an emergency happens or some sort of intervention might need to take place. I just, yeah, if everybody's not on the same page and really committed to that decision, I feel like that is also a red flag. Physically, of course, we do a full assessment. So I'm taking, when somebody reaches out to me, if they're curious about doing a home birth, I'll do a full physical assessment, getting their health history. So certain medical conditions, like if somebody had heart disease or kidney disease, um, if somebody has developed high blood pressure during pregnancy or gestational diabetes in which they need insulin, um, serious conditions, of course, like preeclampsia, or if their baby is growing like smaller than we would be expecting, these would all be indications that there could be more complications that develop, or also that they would be better suited to have the tools and resources available in the hospital. Um, and it's a continual assessment. So somebody might come to me at the beginning of the care and everything is fine, but mid care, their blood pressure gets really high. So, of course, then I have to make the assessment of like, oh, we need to get access other care right now because we've used our toolbox and the blood pressure is not staying within the normal range. And then, of course, that assessment continues throughout the labor process and the postpartum. That if anything comes up during any of these stages that would warrant a transfer, then that would happen. So we're always continuously assessing if somebody is staying low risk, and if their health parameters are within the normal range, that being out of the hospital would be a safe option.
Right. Definitely makes sense. And I love what you said in the beginning, like in the start, the trust part. I really feel and the commitment that it's needed from it. You really need to believe, right? And I remember with my birth as well, and this is what sense, like I can sense from moms that I'm working with as well. You really need to be 100%. Like if you personally, like in an emotional level, have doubts, I would
Yeah.
I would not be comfortable there then. So I think that faith in our body, in our ability, and the preparation that goes behind it, right? Not just showing up and expecting a home birth without any prenatal checks or any um, prenatal education or anything. You can't just show up and ask, like, expect a home birth, unless, of course, qadar Allah, it happens. That's a different scenario. But if it is something you are working towards, I think that kind of preparation is very important. And then understanding everything, like being fully prepared for the full picture, right? That part's very important. Because of course, minimizing and mitigating risk factors as well is very, very crucially important. And now, because mashallah, you are a certified midwife and, like I said, a professional one, what safety measures do you take to ensure mother and baby are protected during the birth, like during
Yeah. So
itself?
if I'm showing up to a birth, I have a big bag with me with lots of different things in it. Um, And I'm always continuously assessing. So I come into somebody's home and, I don't think, and I hope that my clients don't feel all the things going off in my brain, because that's for me to hold and for really for them and their family to just be fully supporting them in the birth process. But I'm, going to assess simple things like, okay, if we're in a certain room and say we have to go to get to the car the quickest way, like what is the route? Or if she's pushing in this position and there's going to be potentially a shoulder dystocia, is there enough room that I would be able to move her body or help guide her body to change positions? Or if there's a neonatal resuscitation and we're in a really small room, again, like where will baby be going? So there's just continual assessment that just happens when I'm in a space with a birthing mother, of just thinking, okay, these are all possible things that can happen, and do I have everything I need? And what would be the quickest way to make that care attend to any of those types of emergencies? Um, so with me, I bring an oxygen tank. I have IV bags. I have medications if there's a postpartum hemorrhage. I have a bag and mask if I need to do neonatal resuscitation. And throughout the labor, of course, I'm assessing the mother's and baby's vitals to be making sure that, those are staying within the normal range. I'm also, making sure that I feel that birth, when we talk about safety in birth, I think that it's a weird, those the words for me is like, I sometimes find it challenging because birth is a very intense experience, and sometimes it's actually just about making that space safe for somebody to feel like they can go into those intense emotions and those intense places, although that might not necessarily feel quote unquote safe to them, because it's really can be a deeply emotional process. But that's also about protecting them, is making sure that they can like go deeply into that space, and that they can do that with a lot of love, a lot of care, a lot of support around them. So it's about emotional safety as well as it is about the keeping mom and baby physically safe as well.
Of course, yeah, that's very important because should God forbid, la subhanallah, any emergency happens, that part, I think this is where what I'm trying to like get the message across as well, that understanding like we need to look at the whole big picture. Like you said, when you walk into the room, there's lots of assessing you need to do, which probably like a person like me who is not a professional midwife would not even I would not even think in that kind of brain capacity. Right. I would know, like, okay, I'm here for a birth as a doula. I'm attending. So a doula and midwife are two different things completely. And I think that message needs to be conveyed very thoroughly across. A doula supports the mother with her physical, emotional, supporting her with pain management and everything, but she is not the birth professional. And that is where we need a professional midwife to be there as a care provider. And so, how, like, God forbid, la samahalla, anything, should anything happen, how do midwives, like professional midwives, handle emergencies? And when would you think a transfer is needed? Of course, I mean, I'm sure you have your whole long criteria. I don't want you to go through that right now,
Totally,
but
totally.
I've
Yeah, I
seen
mean,
people do that. So that's why
absolutely. So, of course, as in my training and as a care provider, I'm trained to handle emergencies. But, before handling emergencies, continuously, like I had mentioned, that assessment. So, making the assessments of, okay, are we within the normal range? Are we kind of scooting outside the normal range, and are we outside of that normal range? And that's, of course, again, like my job. I wouldn't be expecting a doula to be doing that. I wouldn't expect a husband to be doing that. My job to be saying like, okay, yep, we're within the normal range, and everything is good, and nope, we are outside of the normal range now, and now I need to either, if it's a postpartum hemorrhage, I need to be using medication, or if it's a postpartum hemorrhage that's not being controlled with the tools I have, that okay, we need to um, transfer to the hospital immediately. I will say that often, in most cases, transfers to the hospital are for non emergent reasons. So it's really less than 10% of the time that there's like a true emergency that happens. But often we're transporting because maybe there's pain management. I would say it was one of the biggest things I found in the US, not necessarily in Pakistan. And for a labor that is like just not, we're having a hard time getting from like point A to point B. So all the things have been done. There's been rest, there's been food, there's been body work, there's been homeopathy, etc., etc. But just needing a little bit of extra help to make the birth continue to progress. So sometimes that might be pain management, sometimes that might be the use of pitocin to help with contractions if there's any like stall in labor. So I'd say that those are most often the reasons for a transport, that it is really quite uncommon to have emergencies, true emergencies in birth, where it's like, oh, we have to actually transport right away. Often we can kind of see, say some things are kind of out of the normal range. It'd be good for us to go to the hospital now so that we can keep from a true emergency developing. And yeah, any situation in which mom's not doing good. So again, I'm seeing that through her emotional health, how is she doing emotionally, but then through her physical signs like her blood pressure, her temperature. And if there would be any signs that that baby's not doing well, so I'm checking throughout labor, continue, quite often listening to baby's heart tones. So those would be reasons, or say there was the water broke and there's thick meconium. So any signs of stress for the mom or baby would be indicated that we should transfer to the hospital.
Right, of course. Yeah, that makes
I would also say, in what you were discussing about, like, oh, how do we, now unfortunately, since in Pakistan it's quite hard if you're wanting to choose a home birth because there's not the availability of attendants. And so I know that there's quite a bit of people that are choosing to birth at home, and I think there's many things that have to be looked at in that decision. One being what you're kind of mentioning is that, like, the assessment of emergencies, but also that preparation, that often, yes, birth does go well, but if it doesn't go well, are you truly prepared for those emergencies, or are you truly prepared for the potential consequences? That I think it's really a healthy thing for every family, if they're working with a sort of like a professional midwife, or they're working with a doctor, or whatever their care might look like, to actually really assess that most of the time birth goes well, but it's not always in our hands. And that really looking at, if there was an emergency that did happen, or an event that we really would not want to happen, how would they deal and cope with that? And I think it's a really big responsibility for people that are choosing out of hospital as well. Um, and the other, so with that, with the transfer to the hospitals, is when I was working in Pakistan, I would always identify somebody that would be our emergency driver, because I would not rely on the ambulance system, because that would just add another delay into the care. So that's again part of that kind of preparation, is that, oh, is there someone in this family, is there a car available, who's going to be able to drive in case there is an emergency, is a really important piece, because I don't feel like the emergency or ambulance service is reliable within Pakistan,
no,
unfortunately.
I agree, definitely. Yeah, these like I said, I cannot, I mean, just talking to you, I'm realizing the huge responsibility it is, and the kind of preparation and what, like, all the behind the scenes work that's happening, mashallah. And that brings me to I think one of the most common few questions that I get, that what role does that whole informed decision making, informed choice play in deciding between home, hospital, or where they want to birth? So
Yeah,
yeah, I think that is where most women are on a fence, right?
totally. I mean, I think informed choice is super important. I think it should be the centerpiece of our care in all the different settings. I think it's hard if I'm speaking to the context of Pakistan per se, because in Pakistan and the States is where I've worked the most, so I can speak to these places. But I feel like it's kind of hard there, because you might have somebody that chooses, okay, they become really informed about birth and quite educated. They feel like being at home would be the most comfortable place, and maybe the most safe place, and I can totally, totally understand, because unfortunately, we don't have great hospitals or providers there. There's some awesome ones, but on we don't have an abundance of those things. that I think that it gets a bit, yeah, even this question, I'm like, how do I answer this the best way? Because I get a little confused in it that I'm like, I think that if, again, it's just really understanding the risks and benefits. So that should be the situation in every situation, that maybe even when clients, a practice they can do is make those informed choice documents for themselves. So they're choosing to be at home. What are the benefits of it? What are the potential risks of it? And when they're looking at the risks, they can really think, oh, okay, well, if these are potential risks, how would like, am I prepared to deal with that? Or am I prepared to take responsibility of that? And the same thing with hospital. Unfortunately, we might be going to a certain setting, but we want to get something out of that setting that setting doesn't have available to us. So again, understanding, okay, if I'm going to go to the hospital, these are the benefits of it. These are the potential risks of it. And am I feel do does one person feel comfortable, um, a that they can put themselves in a position where they might be exposed to those risks, or take responsibility, um, for those potential risks as well. That's
Yep,
connected to their
definitely.
decision
I
making.
like the list part. I like the fact that because that is what I teach as well. So there is a whole module in my birth classes where we talk about protecting your birth environment, and I teach them how to make informed decisions because no one can make the decisions for you. It should be you, right? So the brain tool, like the benefits, risks, alternatives, uh,
Yeah,
what is your intuition, and praying istikhara, of course. And then just what if you just wait, and when do you need to decide? Is it now,
right.
or you can wait a bit? So I think that that part, and having the right knowledge behind it as well. And then, of course, speaking to your care providers and discussing and assessing the whole situation. It needs to be a very wholesome decision, right? It
Absolutely.
can't just be, oh, I want something. Well, is it realistically possible, right?
Exactly.
We don't live in
Exactly.
ideal world. We need to look at realistic situations as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
very, very important. So, having said that, what advice would you give to families who are exploring their options and want to make the safest choice for birth?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I think the exercise that you were saying, I think is really great. And I think that it could be a really good practice for families to do that. Go through those different, like, kind of steps that you mentioned, and really when they're making their decision. I think also it's really important for them. Generally family is quite involved, especially in births within Pakistan. So it's like, oh, if they're making this informed choice, like really making sure that the whole family is going to have an influence on that. Although, of course, they get to make their own decision and they have that autonomy and they get to make the decision that's best for their body and their family. That in the most immediate sense, that extended family, I feel if they're living in a joint family, that there's also influence there. That it really is kind of takes the whole family. I think that I think the piece about being realistic is really important. So that, if somebody's exploring their different options and they have a really an idea of what they want their birth to look like, um, just being realistic with what a hospital might be able to do for you, what if you're going with a traditional birth attendant, what they might be able to do with you. If you're choosing to birth with just your husband, well, then what's the actual reality of that situation? What are the things that you would have to really think about and really plan for? And of course we trust Allah, and I have a deep, deep trust in birth, but they're also we have to accept, like you said, that it's kind of an imperfect world. There are things that do happen that mean that we are going to have to be responsive to them. So I think that just trusting birth, if that's like the reason for, oh, I trust birth, so I'm going to birth at home, that's a beautiful and that's a great foundation. But it's really, really important to, um, understand all the different potential complications that could come with that, and how you would have to like mitigate them. Um, so I feel like, yeah, I think just making an informed choice, really thinking about risks, benefits, alternatives, and what will make, yeah, like you had mentioned, like praying about it, really taking time, that doesn't have to be rushed, especially if they're starting this exploration at the beginning of their pregnancy. They don't have to be rushed into making a decision. They can take the time. They can take the childbirth education. They can, go to multiple different providers until they feel comfortable with somebody. Um, so I feel like, yeah, taking time and um, doing like thorough research, and then also, yeah, really listening to like to the heart and into the intuition around it as well.
Yeah, I agree. And this doctor shopping part just takes me back 13, 14 years ago when I was trying for my VBAC. And I think some of you might be surprised to hear that I changed 18 doctors because where I am, it's illegal to have a home birth, right? So I was left with an option to birth in a hospital, but then finding someone who did support or would allow me a VBAC, right? And then I just learned I don't need anyone to allow me. I need to shop and find someone who would support me with my decision. And that's why I actually changed 18 doctors. And it was not easy. And I love the way you broke it down as well, that kind of informed decision and that kind of preparation is very important. And before I come to that's kind of scenario where I was at, I want to talk to you about that in a bit. But I would what you mentioned that, um, there would be different care providers like you would choose. So comparing places which would not have certified professionals, but they might have traditional midwives. So a traditional midwife compared to a certified one, which would be the safer choice? I mean, I know the answer, but I would love others to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I would say that most often, okay, this question is tricky for me for a couple of reasons. One is that you have really safe traditional midwives, I would say, and you also have you have safe certified midwives and safe traditional midwives, and you also have providers in both of those that could be potentially dangerous. Um, in the context of, I also feel that traditional midwives, they really have been carrying on this lineage of midwifery that was like generally passed down orally, generally passed down through the family for hundreds and thousands of years. And it's really just been with the birth of like modern obstetrics that their care has really gotten like distorted and sidelined. And I think with everything, that if you look back onto the last 150, 200 years, how we've had a loss of tradition, a loss of culture, a loss of language, a loss of traditional healing practices, we also see that with birth as well. And so in Pakistan, you have a lot of traditional midwives who, when the British Raj outlawed midwifery, um, they basically, in the 1900s, they outlawed midwifery within the subcontinent, and they said that if you are midwives are not good providers because they don't know how to do interventions. So a lot of what we can see now is that a lot of midwives have adopted these interventions because we've also adopted that as a society. People think, oh, a provider is good if they give me an injection or if they give me an IV, or I want this birth to happen fast. I would often see this in the villages I'd work with, that they'd be like, oh, they'd come into our birth clinic and they'd be like, oh, you're not going to give me the injection to make this birth go fast. I can just go to the dye who will do that. And so those are unsafe practices. We should not be giving any Pitocin to birthing people during labor. Um, and I feel that that is also just very reflective because they didn't get to, like, the continuum of getting to practice as a traditional midwife had gotten quite disturbed, and they've adopted practices that weren't aligned with, I think, their original traditional practices. I'll also say that there are midwives, traditional midwives in other places in the world. Like I have a friend who's down in like Guatemala, and amazing, like that continuum hasn't, like their lineage has not been as broken, and they're really, really, really fantastic midwives. Um, so, and the first midwife I worked with, apprentice with, that was a certified professional midwife. She made every birth I was with became an emergency with her. And it took me, because it was the first time I was like seeing birth and working with a provider, that it took me a while to be like, oh, she's actually a dangerous provider, because she's making everything into an emergency and making situations that were safe becoming unsafe. So I would say, again, that's kind of why it's hard for me, is because I have a real deep, like, love and appreciation and respect for the midwives that I've like carried this lineage on, and I can also see in our history how that's gotten distorted. So I would say though, in my experience of like in a place like Pakistan, unfortunately, you have a lot of midwives, traditional midwives, that have adopted these interventions and these practices because they've been wanting to mimic what people are getting in the hospital, but they're not being applied in the appropriate setting, or they might be, giving medications, but they don't actually listen to fetal heart tones, so they're not doing proper assessments. So I think that if somebody's ever like interviewing a provider, it's really under it's important for them to understand their training. What kind of supplies do they bring to birth? Are they going to be checking the baby's vitals? Are they going to be checking the mother's vitals? What is there? As I've kind of mentioned, I have a whole thing that I'm looking at throughout the whole birth. My plan for if there's emergency, how are we going to make a transport happen? And of course, I'm checking the vitals throughout the whole labor to make sure that mom and baby are staying within the normal range. And then I have my tools that I need in case any emergency does develop. And so I feel like with both traditional and even certified midwives, like it's just important that you would really question, like, um, does these providers, like, are they trained for these emergencies? What kind of supplies do they have? And what would be, their plan? And how do they just assess and support physiological and the normal, like, unfolding of birth?
Right. Yeah, of course. Like you said, I think at this stage, the way you described it, it would be the same as doctor shopping. Like you're shopping to find the
Yeah.
right one. And
Yeah.
there's, again, we can expect interventions just because the label midwives with it doesn't mean that automatically it becomes autonomous. Right. Yeah.
Totally.
I think that
And you might have, I mean, even in Pakistan, again, if we talk, there's like 30,000 certified midwives. A lot of the midwives, unfortunately, they often are acting as nurses in the hospital, or in the rural areas they are doing births on their own. But in the city centers, that's not as common. And I would say with the even with the certified midwives in Pakistan, it really again depends on like where did their training happen and where did their experience happen, because I've trained midwives there, so I've gotten to see that there are some really, really talented, very, very, very skilled midwives who've invested a lot in their training, who keep up with their training. But then you also have midwives who will act, yeah, again, very similar to maybe what we would expect out of a doctor, doing a lot of interventions, cutting episiotomies, kind of pulling the baby out. And so, yeah, it's really, really important, I think, wherever you are in the world, like you did, is really finding somebody who's going to be supportive of your decisions and that also, of course, has that skill set to be able to support you in the safest way.
course, yeah. That makes sense actually. That kind of clarifies things for me. And the last question for me before we jump to our Q&A. So in scenarios, so like I said, like I just described my scenario a while ago, where either professional midwives or the right midwife that you've shopped for doesn't exist, or if you're in a country where home births are illegal, how what would you advise the parents to get their best birth experience if they have no choice but go to a hospital, for example, right? Or shop in
Yeah.
a hospital. What would your advice be to help them get that autonomy, to help them get that natural birth? What can they do?
Yeah. So I
Want
think
them feeling left out.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think that this really like this whole conversation really brings to like, oh, we have a long way to go. We have a very long way to go so that families do have that option, right? Everybody should have that option of deciding, okay, yep, I want to choose to birth at home and I have a skilled provider that can support me in that. Or I want to choose in hospital and I have a skilled provider that can provide me safe care in there, or a birth center. Like that is the most ideal world, and that is something that we should be striving for. And so I mean, the work you do, I feel like, is so important for that, because advocacy for better birth practices, birth attendance, and birth settings it's like our lifetime work. And I think, yeah, in the mix of looking for a good provider is going to have to be this continual advocacy for oneself. So, like you did, shopping for 18 providers, I can imagine that that was an extraordinarily exhausting process. And yeah, I could imagine you could, people around you might say that, like, why do you, a lot of people make commentary on people's birthing choices, and that some people think it's not a big deal, whatever, I had this done, that done, like you don't need to find this provider. But the fact that you were very dedicated because you realized that, okay, if I want this particular birth, then I need to really find somebody that I feel comfortable with, and not stopping until you did that. So I say that that is amazing and incredible, and great. You have to have a certain level of dedication to be able to do that. And I would just say that for the families is that it's really important that that together they're really together as a unit. So because if they are going to be looking for a different hospital, or searching with different providers, it's really important that they're both really committed to, like, okay, we're going to find the person that feels the best, that makes the most sense, that can support us in this decision. And understanding, what the line is, that maybe the provider is great to like 70%, but 30% of the things they're like, oh, they might not, respect these wishes, but how can we still be advocating for those continuously? I think childbirth education, like you've already doing and offering to these women, is an amazing first step, because that gives the families the ability to become informed, so that when they're going into these different situations and talking to the doctors, they know what kind of questions to ask. They also know when might be the appropriate time to go to the hospital, what's the appropriate time to stay at home in labor, especially in early labor, so that they know, like, oh, the hospital has these kind of services that they offer. They might not be, most often they do not have the capacity to be giving emotional support. So where is that going to come from? Is the husband or is a family member allowed in the birth space? If not, like, what is the internal work that needs to happen so that person can feel like they can give themselves that emotional support throughout the birth experience? um and yeah, and again, just like kind of knowing, like, okay, the hospital might not be able to give these things, or if in early labor they're probably not going to be able to give a lot of support, so that understanding that they can stay at home longer. And I think that's where education comes in. So I really think that, like, education, continual advocacy, gentleness and compassion with yourself, as it can be an exhausting process to try to find that birth, the birthplace that makes the most sense. But I think also we know that birthplaces obviously have a big impact on the person's birth experience. But I think that a person, if they can be realistic and not think, oh, this birthplace is going to give me that experience, that is really coming from my inward journey and from like the close people around me, and just continuing to, like, protect that space as they go into these, maybe a birth space that's not as ideal as they would want.
Yeah. Yep. I agree 110% with everything you said. And of course, right, try to protect it as much as, like, don't go in too soon, for example, right? Especially if nowadays, I think the biggest dilemma is if we find a supportive provider, they're not allowing the husband. Or if they allow the husband, they're not allowing a doula, right? So then how do you navigate that? So that's where I say that try to be in a space, not blindly, being well informed and keeping a check on things, but um where you have the support and literally go last minute as much as possible, right? I think yeah, this is where, like you said, protecting that space and protecting that environment, and leaving no stone unturned. I think that's what I learned from my own journey. Like, you tie your camel and then the tawakkul, and literally find out every single option that you have, and to help you make that safe choice. I think that that part's very important. Um, yeah, I love the tips that you've just given here. Um, before we pop on to the questions, I just want to mention a few things because we just talked about the classes. There is, because I also work with Amani Birth and we are doing this Moon Birth Summit. It's an online summit which has lots of talks and 27 speakers. I'm speaking, my topic is going to be in VBAC, since I just saw a question coming up in VBAC, and it's happening next weekend and it's all online. It's all completely online. It's discounted. And if you use my code, you get an extra discount. So that is something I really want everyone to do sign up for, just to, again, increase your knowledge, increase the information and from different aspects. Try to take it from wherever you can. And if you're looking for structured classes, which is what I recommend and what I do basically, and like Jahan said, that's very important. And my classes include everything that literally a woman needs to know from day one of her pregnancy. And please don't leave it till the end. That's my advice. Don't come to me at 36 weeks trying to take your classes because that's just, I can't. I want to, but I can't. It needs to be preparation. There is mental, emotional, physical preparation happening from day one of your pregnancy. The sooner, the better for you. And so there's a guide about pregnancy nutrition because your nutrition plays a whole role, direct role. How active you are, natural pain management techniques, what a mother needs, how to make those informed decisions, how to do the doctor shopping. And I share my personal tips because I've done a lot of it. And I'm doing it continuously with my moms as well, like giving them the tools and the tips to help them um, and changing it according to each person's situation as well. Right. And then, of course, we talk about birthing positions and understanding how the whole labor process works. Like, what I would say in a sentence is don't go into your birth experience in the dark. Like you need to have the knowledge and light. When you know what to expect, when you know what's happening, I feel that plays a big role on you to be able to make the right decision for your birthplace, for your care provider, and all of that that comes along with it. And then having a solid birth plan with you, right? And how to make your labor easier, and then being informed about true complications as well. Um, and then, of course, postpartum, because I'm also a lactation professional. So I cover all of that. I cover the whole education part, and it's all online. It's available everywhere in the world. And my support never ends with the classes. So it's ongoing thing. And then you join all these support groups with mama supporting each other. I just feel it's a community I'm trying to build, and it's been building for a while. And I really think that is what a mother needs. A mother needs the right support and guidance. So yes, you can get a lot of YouTube videos. You can get it from anywhere online, but getting structured professional guidelines, evidence-based information, me being a VBAC mom, but having worked specifically with VBAC moms, I do add on a special VBAC component to my classes as well. So all of that is included. So please definitely sign up. I teach in 3 languages. So my next Urdu group is starting 7th of October, and the seats are filling up fast. My English group's in November now, and the Arabic is there all the time because I do that based on demand. So yeah, I want mamas not to go into their birth alone. And the next upcoming thing, so these are all my services and stuff that you can find on my Instagram as well. But by the next 2 things, one thing is happening tomorrow. So I have a breastfeeding the right start workshop happening tomorrow. If anyone needs to sign up for that, I do advise taking lactation education during pregnancy as well, right? Just like you would prepare for something beforehand, the same thing goes for that. And then next month I have on pumping also. All right, so these were a little bit of things that are upcoming. I just wanted to announce those. Now, I would love to have everyone else type in their questions in the comment box. I do have some nice messages for you in the comment box, Jahan. I'm just going to read them out. So there is Yamna. She says, "Good to see you here. Glad you were there with me during my labor. Her baby is now 2 years old."
So good to have you here. MashaAllah.
And then Vanya is here as well. And Arisha remembers that big bag. And Vani is here while hearing this wonderful talk. She's recalling every single process of her home birth with Jahan. It was truly beautiful, alhamdulillah. From the antenatal assessments to the labor and postnatal care, Jahan was with me as my family. Her love, care, skills, and trust were the factors that kept me going and helping me gain confidence about birthing at home. And then Tehreem as well said salam. And I think my second or third enriching talk was with Tehreem, and she shared her extremely hilarious birth story with us.
It's
So
funny.
that's there if anyone wants to catch that up. I loved that. And yes, if anyone has any questions. So the first question from Noor is, can you share a written list of questions to ask/check things to check when choosing a birth care provider, specifically a midwife. So, Noor, before Jahan answers this, I would suggest that if you haven't taken birth classes, I highly recommend you do that because we do go through potential questions catered, tailored for you specifically. So that's what I would do. Jahan, you want to add something onto that?
Yeah, I think that's yeah, I definitely recommend childbirth education. I think that's fantastic. You have an amazing teacher here, Hafsa. And yeah, what you were just saying about the tailored questions, because there's obviously just general questions that I would say again, like what is your training? How are you going to assess me throughout pregnancy? What's going to be the assessments through labor, postpartum care? What's the care you offer in postpartum? But also there are probably things that are more particular to you and your situation that you want from a provider. Not there's I really believe there's like a midwife for every person, but I might not be the personally the midwife that's for everybody, right? There might be I really think that people should find a provider that they really resonate with, and that can be on multiple different levels. So I think there's the practicalities of like just yeah, training, what's the preparation and what tools do they have, and when do they go on call? And I'm happy to send a list. And then I think also just like the more personal questions that somebody might feel is important in how they want to connect with a provider. Because I would say midwifery, the beauty of midwifery is that it's a very relational base. Again, it's not, we're talking this session we did a lot of talk about okay the assessments and physical assessments, but I mean the base of our care is very relational, it's very emotional, it's very spiritual, and so you want somebody that can also support you through in those spaces as well, and that kind of looks different from each person what they're desiring.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's a beautiful way that you said it. It's like a relationship that you build. And I think one of the moms here who shared her experience said the same, that she felt like you were part of the family. So she felt that it's the right person. And I remember being told about some care providers that they were amazing for them. But when I went, I realized that they didn't talk much. And I'm me being an extrovert and someone who talks a lot, that was not the
Yeah.
kind of care provider I was looking for, right? So yes, it needs to be someone you are comfortable with. Right. Subhanallah, yes. How does a mother differentiate between real emergency or a normal procedure? What are the real emergency factors? Because normal vaginal delivery and active labor is real tough and looks like an emergency. Hmm.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there's a lot of work that we as this is why again childbirth education is really important because we have a lot of fear around birth, a lot of fear around the sensations of birth, and it can look really, yeah, if we don't really know, oh, this is actually a normal process, it can look really scary if you're experiencing it or seeing it for the first time. So I think that's really where education plays a major role because it can really bring down. I mean, I've had people that were, reaching out to me for home birth and they were like, I'm really scared. They took childbirth education and they felt so much more confident and comfortable in it because they were able to see, oh, yeah, this is actually what this normal process looks like. So I think education plays a really big role, and that knowing that like yeah you're gonna make sounds, that's normal, that it is an intense experience, and again that's what I was saying, like how do the people around you help to make that safe intense experience for you to go into, and how do you yourself, a lot of that preparation is you being able to be comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, and really trusting that this birth experience isn't anything that's happening outside of you or that's being done to you or is a punishment. It's really this beautiful miraculous process that Allah has been able to design our bodies to do, and that's really coming from within. So I think one is just again education and how do we view and relate to labor. A lot of work needs to be done around that. And you know, so it's not uncommon that someone during their birth experience will feel like or say, I feel like I'm going to die. That is not an uncommon thing. And that is why it's helpful when you have somebody that's been around birth a lot in the birthing space, because they can be like, okay, this is transition. Like, this isn't actually this woman saying that they're going to die because that's actually what's happening. A very, this is their body going through some spiritual death in many ways, of like you've had this baby in you for 9 months and now you have to let go, and that is a death in many ways, one could say. um So being able to like differentiate that, like, oh yeah, these are just like intense pains, because that is what labor, that is, can be a labor experience. And like, it's not uncommon that somebody at some point, especially before they're pushing their baby out, might have a moment of kind of freaking out. And that we can really just again, give a lot of love, to help them move through that. And versus like a true emergency, where something that, again, vitals are not sounding good, there is bleeding that's going on, there's something with fetal heart tones that aren't sounding normal. But I think the intensity around birth, um, yeah, education helps with that. And yeah, having, I think also having people that understand that, oh, this is a normal experience. It's normal that it's going to be really intense and that you might be screaming every 3 minutes. And again, how do we just give like love and support during that time?
And the primal birth noises, as well as I always tell the moms and the dads, I make sure that I try to make sure that parents are involved, not just the mother, as much as possible. Them knowing that what the transition stage looks like, just so that they don't freak out that, oh my God, is this a real emergency? Right?
Totally.
A mother is going through a transition and she's starting to give up or things like that. That is expected to happen. And if
Hmm.
it's happening, that's actually a good sign to perceiving it positively as well, right? That knowledge helps you definitely. What about having a VBAC at home? That's another question.
Yeah, what about having to be back at home? So I have done VBACs in home birth setting and in hospital birth setting. VBAC, I think we really believe, like, if you go to a care provider, VBAC doctors are going to say, oh, there's this huge risk of uterine rupture, although that risk is very low. It's only 0.5% of the time if you've had one C-section. So this means 99.5% of the time, there's not a risk of the uterine rupturing. But when you go to the hospital setting, make it sound like anyone that's had a cesarean, that their uterus is going to rupture. So, with clients that are choosing to birth at home that have had a C-section, a previous C-section, of course, I do informed choice about that. The risks and benefits of being out of hospital, the potential for uterine rupture, although it's quite low, but we talk about that. So there's a specific document I give my clients who are choosing that, so they can really understand the risks and benefits of a VBAC birth. That they could choose to do another elective C-section if they want to, or they could choose to have go for a vaginal birth or a physiological birth. And in the out of hospital setting, the things that are kind of are like additional risks is that we don't have immediate access to an OR. So in case there was an issue with, say, the uterine rupturing, that we wouldn't have immediate access that they do in the hospital. So that's an additional risk that I want my clients to be thinking about. And that in the hospital, they're often doing continual fetal monitoring. So we've seen that with the risk of with uterine rupture, often, like 70% of the time, we start seeing that there's abnormalities in the fetal heart tones before the actual rupture takes place. So at home, we can't do continuous monitoring, but I often, with my VBAC moms, I will just listen more often. So if it's somebody that doesn't have a scar in their uterus, I would listen every 30 minutes in labor. With somebody that has had the scar on their uterus, I will listen every 10 to 15 minutes in labor, just to keep a better eye on the fetal heart tones. So yeah, somebody that's choosing to do VBAC at home, I mean, it's very, very similar. I think that, we don't, I often we make it come into this huge high risk category, and it's really not. Like, it's really, really not at all. There's just additional little things to be thinking about. That there is a slight risk, very slight risk of the uterine rupturing. And that, again, like, we don't have the continuous monitoring, or we don't, OR is not easily accessible. And those would be things that, again, if you were just a person birthing out of the hospital, you would already be talking about that. But oh yeah, we don't have, an OR right here. So in the case of a true emergency, like, how do we get to the hospital in the quickest way? And how do we, again, how are we continuously just monitoring to make sure that vitals, et cetera, are staying within the normal range?
Lovely. And since VBAC is so close to my heart, I can't agree more. Honestly, I used to think like especially since I focus a lot on VBACs as well. The way that I mentally prepared myself was that just consider it as a natural birth with correct knowledge about any of the warning signs,
Yeah.
the way I perceived it. Maham, thank you so much for your kind words. She says that every mom should definitely take Hafsa's birth classes for sure. She says, I feel so shocked that there was so many things no one would tell you, what to expect, how to deal with each phase of pregnancy and labor. Moreover, we are advised in our dean to approach everything with knowledge. So yeah, she highly recommends that. Thank you so much, Maham. And Ubaida, she's another birth worker. She's saying, always take TB classes. Small women stay away from classes, thinking more classes, more information may get overwhelming. It's the opposite. It takes away the nerves. And thank you so much. She's been following me for a while and she recommends that. Thank you, Vanya. She's birth classes and valuable workshops. I think she's done every single workshop I've offered.
I know. Vanya's awesome.
All right. Are there any online resources you recommend to read further about birthing? Are there any videos you recommend watching? So, Isra, I think you just joined, maybe. I do recommend you to sign up for the detailed structured classes. That is what I would recommend. If that is something that maybe, I don't know, if you couldn't afford or something, then there is a lot of literature and stuff that you can find out there. But just make sure you're searching, how would I say, evidence-based information, um, s- something that will give you the right guidelines. And I feel this is where investing in birth classes is what I recommend. Honestly, I can't just say, oh, okay, go onto YouTube and watch that. I just can't do that. Yeah.
Well, and birth classes have made it easy because you've compiled all of the research in a nice digestible way instead of reading a book here or watching a video there. Yeah, you have it already like systematically done. So it's much easier to kind of digest that information.
Right. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
They
Okay,
It's
question for you.
like called evidence-based birth, and I like them if you're really wanting to go into like the research. Um, they have it over many different topics, and I think that can be helpful, especially if you're really thinking about informed choice. Um, yeah. I also have a project that I'm hoping to start within the next year, so I will be announcing that at some point, inshallah.
I did.
Um, wanting to
Definitely
do
let me
some
know. I'll help
kind
you
of
out with that.
evidence-based practices.
Yes, no, EBB is really good. I like evidence-based birth. I like the way their podcasts and stuff are really good. I think to help put that perspective and think clearly. So
Yeah.
there's a question for you from Maham. She absolutely wants a home birth, but you're not there. She wants to get you into Pakistan. I told her that. Anyway, you're a gem of a person. I truly hope that we'll be able to meet you someday. Do you have any recommendations of any certified midwives in Karachi? Somebody you've worked with, perhaps?
Yeah, I really wish I did. I really wish I did. And unfortunately, I don't. Like I said, the cities are a little bit harder. Like I've trained midwives in Southern Punjab and I can recommend a midwife there. But in the city that most often, like I said, they're working in the hospital and they end up working like a nurse, so they often don't have the confidence or the skill set. But mostly they don't have the confidence to feel like they can do birth um, at home, is my experience. So I really wish I had somebody that I could recommend, and I really hope that we will see that as more mothers become educated, that some will start becoming midwives themselves.
Mhm.
Um, but unfortunately, at this time, I don't have any provider that I could recommend. And I wish it was otherwise. And I understand the struggle and the pain there.
Right. Okay. Mashallah, there's lots of things coming up here. I'm quickly going to go through it because then one mama wants to ask you a live question. So, if a trained midwife for home birth is not available, what tools, equipments, and skills apart from birth education are needed to home birth without a care provider? Now, before Jahan answers that, I just want to say a clear disclaimer. This is not something I recommend, and Jahan knows that. Uh,
Yeah.
so I don't recommend free birthing and I don't recommend birthing without a care provider. That is my personal stance and a very clear one I am about.
Yes, no, and that's great. It's really important for people to be clear. And I I think that I trust that a person can make a decision for them. I think it's really important that a person understands the totality of the decision that they're making. Um, and that if they're making that, that is really that they should be that they have to take responsibility for what emergencies might arise. And if they're not able to assess or treat that emergency, like you have to be fully taking full responsibility for that. Um, so in the realms of what you would need for a home birth without a care provider, I would say is that could, yeah, that just having, there's certain things that you're going to be able to have and some things you can't. I think having medication for postpartum hemorrhage is really the biggest thing. So even with when we were doing a lot of flood relief work, there's a lot of people in Pakistan outside of the cities, they're not birthing with birth providers because there's actually just not enough birth providers. So we would be providing them with birthing kits, and this would be having medication in case there was a postpartum hemorrhage. So that's a big thing I feel is really important, that if somebody is choosing to birth without a provider, or because they might not have access to a provider, even here, I mean, I think maternity care across the globe, it's really devastating. I'm here in the United States. I'm in Maine. It's a rural area, and they're shutting down hospitals so that there are people that don't have a care provider within 6 hours from them. So you're going to have instances where people actually just do not have access to a provider, or they might be on their way to a provider. So I think in these realms, it's always important that a person could be as prepared as they could be in these situations. Um, because like I said, we're not in an ideal situation yet within the birthing
Yeah.
setting.
All right. Secondly, what are the some of the top tips you have for a mom, for moms who have to birth at a hospital due to lack of midwifery, like midwives, certified midwives, and want to spend most of their time at home? What should they be assessing? How to power through that? That's a nice question.
Yeah. I think what we've been saying over and over again is that childbirth education is going to really, really help you to feel comfortable and confident staying at home. Having a doula can also be really amazing because they can also be reassuring of, yep, this is normal, this is a good, yep, you're still good. All right, it's awesome to be at home right now. And if the doula is there in person, there's a lot of like different physical support that they can be doing, or if it's online, because I know Hafsa also offers virtual doula services, that you having the support of somebody that again is very familiar with birth, so that they can kind of help to guide you about what you can do at different stages within the labor process, and when is the best time to go to the hospital. So I generally think that if the way that we used to birth and the way that it's still happening in some places, is that it was just within the community. You would have your grandmother there, you would have your mother there, people that have already gone through the birthing experience would be surrounding you and being able to give you that support and that encouragement because they knew what was normal. And nowadays we might not necessarily have that. We've had a couple generations that have gone through twilight births to like lots of C-sections, or just haven't been gone through the birth process themselves. So I always say that having somebody that has seen birth and that really knows what is normal, is an amazing, amazing, amazing like tool and help to have on your side. Because they're able to assess and say, yeah, this is okay. Oh, yeah, this intensity, that's what we're looking for. This is a good sign. Or be like, this is actually going on longer to be expected, or this seems abnormal, it's probably a good time for you to go to the hospital. So I definitely say that doulas, if you do not have access to a certified midwife, doula for not for the medical assessment, but for that knowing what normal birth looks like and being able to give you that support and encouragement through the process.
Yeah, lovely. Definitely. Thank you so much. I would just add on also like all your oxytocin inducing things, like ask for your massage lady to come at that time. Things that just help you with your comfort measures as well. That makes a big difference. Just to calm, like keep that calm as much as possible, inshallah. Fatima is here. She's saying she just came here to show her heartfelt gratitude to both of us. She said, Hafsa Baji didn't just give me education, she was always there for me. I pray, yeah, subhanAllah, she was in labor while I was in Medina. So, yeah, alhamdulillah, the emotional support. And Jahan is becoming like a sister in short span of time. Your gentleness, care, and professionalism, everything is just, mashallah. Absolutely. Love you, Jahan. You're amazing. Miriam's asking, what advice would you give someone who's having twins after two C-sections? She's planning to have a VBAC. Aha, okay, that definitely kind of puts a little bit more of the risk factor there. What would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll say congratulations on your pregnancy and on twins. Inshallah, everything will remain healthy and well. Um, yeah, it does. When you've had, I would say, kind of depends on where you birthing. But again, just finding a really good supportive healthcare provider It's a little bit challenging, I'm going to be honest, because it's you've had somebody's had two belly bursts and then also having twins. And some care providers um, are not experienced in either of these. So I think the one thing is really, really finding a good care provider that would be able to support the VBAC birth and then also being able to support the twin birth.
Yeah. I think that's what I would start definitely. I would definitely be well informed and I would start with the doctor shopping as well, just so that you have that kind of backup support as well. Is it true that uterine rupture risk is high if you don't wait at least 2 years? So that was old information. Now the updated is if you have a gap of 18 months between births, that's a good enough gap to try for a VBAC,
Mhm.
right? Not for conception, for a the difference between birth.
Yeah.
Aisha said, I tried for a VBAC, water broke, went to the hospital, waited for 24 hours, still no progress. The nurse put drips for forced labor. Okay, she was induced 5 hours later, no pain. And she had gestational diabetes as well, and that they rushed her into a C-section. So, Aisha, I just want to say there was a birth last week only, one of my mamas. And Jahan is aware of that. Remember that short time so her water broke and she gave birth literally 6 days later, mashallah. And yes, she didn't wait blindly. So water breaking, it's not like in the movies you rush to the hospital. There is a certain protocol you follow based on the evidence-based guidelines. And as long as the water is clear, you're doing fine, the baby's doing fine, you're replenishing the fluids, all these things, and then infection markers. We need to look at the whole picture. So subhanAllah, this has just happened. It's one of my very dear mamas who succeeded, mashallah. Um, Probably the reason, the answer to your question, and Jahan can add more to it, is the reason why probably your labor didn't progress is because the baby in the body wasn't ready yet. So water breaking is one of the signs that it's preparing, but it is not the sign that labor is about to start. So basically, it was an induced labor. And mentally, when I hear about induction, inducing means forcing things out or speeding things up more than it should be done naturally. And that itself can go south, or it can end up, like you said, in a C-section because the baby and the mother and the body just did not respond like it should have and just needed time, perhaps, right? So, but that you did have that gestational um, diabetes factor in there as well. So we need to look at the full picture as well. What would you add on to that?
No, that's exactly what I would say is that if the body, the cervix wasn't opening after 31 hours, it can be so completely normal as you just experienced it, a woman's water broken then 6 days later. So it just was probably just the body, just body and baby, yeah, you both weren't ready. And unfortunately, there wasn't like that time that wasn't given to allow the body to get into labor on its own. So it doesn't, there's nothing wrong with you, nothing wrong with baby. It was just a matter that you both just needed a bit more time.
So I'm just answering Isra. She's asking about the evidence-based. So there is a website, EBB, evidence-based birth. You can find their vlogs and things there. All right. So that would help you with your further reading. There's also, I think, Cochrane Library. Um, yeah, look at research articles that have a good qualitative and a quantitative amount to help you with that. Arisha's here. She's saying, looking forward to Jahan. She hopes it's something that brings you back to Pakistan. Well, Arisha, I know what will bring Jahan back to Pakistan, but yeah, I'm trying to work on that. Um, can
I'm
I
going to be braid hair by the time, but it's all right.
Um, can I find a midwife in Riyadh to meet personally? Can I suggest one? I know in Saudi they have a really good midwifery organization, like it's an association of midwives together. I have happened to meet one of them who's part of the organization community, Dr. Roa. Um, I can definitely put you in touch. Let me speak to her. So you might want to just reach out to me on direct afterwards. You can note down my number. I'll definitely put you in touch with her, and she might be able to suggest somebody. All right, their midwifery game is going well, from what I've understood.
Absolutely.
In that case, what tests should be done from the labs during spending initial time at home?
Yeah, so there's no labs that need to be done. Even if you're doing home birth, even if you're planning for a home birth, it's really best for the midwife to also not come in early labor, because early labor is all about establishing that labor pattern. It's about mom getting to rest, getting to sleep. When she's not sleeping, doing some movement, but really allowing like the hormones to get established and the rhythm to get established. And generally, if you have a lot of different interference during this time, it can disrupt that process. As well as we don't want to put a lot of focus on early labor, because then it's like you're watching that pot to boil. It just can feel like there's a lot of pressure, and that can have an impact on it as well. So even if it's my clients and they're in labor, I would be just assessing to see how their labor progress is going. And sometimes I end up going there when they are in early labor, because that's just how the events have unfolded. But most often, it's really best for the midwife to also not come until labor is more active. So we don't aren't honestly, because again, that kind of risk of something happening is quite low, that it's more beneficial for somebody to be just in their labor experience than be necessarily having monitoring happening during that time. So being able to just kind of sink into the labor and having, going to a if you're going to a hospital, when you're in active, strong labor, or similarly having your birth provider come over, that generally serves everybody the best, because you want to have a rested provider, but also you want to be able to have synced into your early labor experience. Um,
Yep. Makes sense. Thank you so much. Nor there's no video specifically of a healthy birth without irregularities because every birth is unique. So I would suggest looking into things like documentaries. The Business of Being Born is one of the first ones I saw. So maybe you want to look into that. All right. Ubeda is asking if the placenta doesn't birth instantly after home birth, how much time is it okay to wait and is hospital transfer necessary? Or is there something a midwife could do to help with the placental birth?
Yeah, so if the placenta, so typically the placenta is born within the first hour. If it is not born within the first hour, it does increase the risk of postpartum hemorrhage. So once we're crossing that hour mark, then if I was at home, I would be making a transfer to the hospital. Um, at home, yeah, we generally, we first start with oxytocin, so having baby be on mom, breast getting like nursing started if baby's ready for that, having mother empty their bladder, having them be in an upright position. Then there can be the use of homeopathy and then medications. So if we've done these things, we're kind of waiting at 30 minutes. The placenta hasn't been born. Then I would often, maybe give a pitocin to help with the birth of the placenta. And then similarly, if you're crossing that hour mark. So just kind of continuously assessing. Sometimes people just need space and time for the placenta to be born. It's still, I always tell people, for us to support physiological birth, that we really shouldn't, once the birth is complete, once the placenta is born, so that anybody who's like in the birthing space should stay in the birthing space. Nobody should be like taking photos or notifying people that baby's been born until the placenta's been born, because there still needs to be attention on the birth of the placenta, and that also helps to increase the physiological birth of the placenta. So it can be normal, and sometimes people just need time. And so as a midwife, I'm just kind of assessing, okay, is bleeding looking fine? Is her bladder emptied? Is baby skin to skin? Is there anything emotionally going on? Because I've seen that hold up the placenta as well. And then, kind of going through the different tools as we approach an hour. Because after that hour, there is an increased risk in the bleeding, and there might be a chance that it's actually retained.
Right. And I just want to add what you said about that intimate space should not be disturbed. And I always say, because I feel we get so excited, oh, the baby's here, we start texting and people. I just advise that keep the small family together. You as a husband, wife, and baby should enjoy this baby and birth. And then after at least that first golden hour is passed, then you start your announcements. Enjoy the sacred time together first. That's my advice.
Absolutely. Well, and it's such a crucial point for baby and for mother. It's such a crucial transitional point. Your baby's just come into the world. It's a whole new place for them. There's so many things. There's like over 30 something different things that have to go on in their system before they're able to start nursing. So, and then we're talking about the uterus has to contract down, it has to release the pregnancy, like fully release the pregnancy now, and then continue to contract down to stop bleeding. So it's just such a very like vulnerable time emotionally and physically that it is really important to just keep a really safe container around that, so that that transition, inshallah, can happen smoothly.
All right, last question before we take the one mom who wants to ask her question live before we end it up because it's gone above our time, but mashallah, just loving it. So Nuzra is asking, my cousin has had two C-sections, last one 3 years back, so it's a 3 years gap. Wants to wait for labor this time. All's good, but her doctor is not willing to give her the trial. What are her options considering she wants a hospital birth? Is it possible to find a doctor? And she's 34 weeks now. So at 34 weeks, I'd say it's still not too late for her to educate herself. So that would be one option so that she knows, but she might feel like she might not have the time. And yes, she can definitely find doctors who would give her the trial. I can think of a few on the top of my head. But just remind her that it's her decision. She has a good gap. She needs to be well informed of the dangerous signs she needs to keep an eye out for as well. What would you add on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, absolutely, she's definitely a candidate or can absolutely go for having a vaginal birth. And yeah, just finding a provider that is could support that. And I know that you know a couple different names that are more willing to do that. So yeah, there's certainly hope, but good to find the provider and to do the education if that hasn't happened as well.
All right, Amina, you are the last one. So last questions from you. You can unmute.
Assalamu alaikum, Hafsa and Jahan. How are you guys doing? And that's good. Good to see you. Well, it's not exactly a question, but I do have something which is it's a suggestion in my head, especially after taking doula training from Aisha Al Hajar directly in life. So I was just thinking that in Pakistan, there's a whole gap in midwifery. Like the typical midwives we get in the hospitals are even in a lower scale than nursing. And truly, the midwives, how they're certified, like Jahan is such a talented young lady from USA. Aisha is such a talented yeah, woman from USA, graduated from USA as a midwife. I was thinking we need to have a educated woman in this field as midwife. Like Hafza, you never thought you will be a doula one day. I'm like I've done a PhD degree in from LUMS. I never thought I'll be taking a doula training, and right now I'm still a trainee. But there's something a process we all women, irrespective of our career, of a profession, we when we get married and we want to have children, ya alhamdulillah, blessed with children, we go through it. So it's one of the common factors of all the women around the world, like with the birthing, the pregnancies, and postpartum. So I was thinking we need to work on this. Truly, some talented women like who in our society who becomes a nurse, those who are underprivileged, like they just did their basic high school. Sorry, Jahan, I'm just talking about Pakistan. I'm not talking about the USA and the States. And no, and only those women who are like, if I'm educated, I'm from a good middle class family, I would want to be a doctor. I would never want to be a midwife. So I was thinking why we need some education in midwifery. We need to establish a good, because now, you know what, we want Jahan to come here. Oh, I just wished Aisha was here so we could have such safe home births, such safe midwives. We don't need obstetrician because I was just thinking, why is there so much intervention in hospitals? Why my doctors always, oh, time's up. I need to do the episiotomy and vacuum. The baby is not coming out. Yeah, oh, it's time that we need to put on some, we need to progress, we need to rush the labor because they have been trained that way, right? For the emergencies. This is what something over the years I concluded. Like if I've been trained to cut and cut, I will prefer cutting and cutting. I will not prefer a natural, physiological birth because we are not the obstetrician and unfortunately our medical system, those who are taking the medical degree, they have been trained to do interventions. That they what they do. And very few doctors out of thousands, we just find a bunch of doctors who just keep contain themselves and say, okay, yes, you can have an unmet birth, we won't be interrupting you, but they do. But by the end of the day, they are gynaes, they need to do something, right? They've been trained for that. So I just wish and I just hope that we work seriously on that
I
to
mean,
establish a midwifery. Gigi, Hafsa, yeah.
that part. I just want to say that I agree with everything, and I'm seeing this myself. It's been 12 years, like I said, working in this, and I agree. So I just want to acknowledge the place for doctors. Like, this is what they're trained to do. And many doctors who've done the physiological birth trainings and stuff, they say that this stuff is not what they were trained for initially, and now they're supporting that. So while every person has their skill of expertise, so while yes, alhamdulillah for doctors for true medical emergencies, yes, I do agree that inshallah, I hope, and I have been speaking to Aisha about this as well, and I think she is considering it also, and then inshallah, hopefully, if we can get Jahan on board, and we get people to have, like we discussed in today's whole talk, that we can find all sorts of care providers, even in doctors, even in midwives, right? To find someone who supports the kind of birth that women need. I feel definitely it is the starting step. And the first step is, of course, the spreading of awareness and educating. So the more the more um, majority or more population that want it, that demand would create the need for such providers, inshallah. And that's where we can definitely, it is this future changes that I envision and I hope for as well, inshallah. Definitely. Anything you want to add to this, Jahan? Because I just really want to wrap this up now, inshallah.
Yeah, absolutely. I would just say that it is like midwifery and women's health across the globe is quite becomes quite political. And within Pakistan, we see that very well, that this is really defined by class, that you have a lot of, yeah, the midwives, they can become a midwife after they finish their metric. They do come from lower economic settings. They are generally from places when I would be training midwives that don't have any care providers within their community. They've seen people that have died in childbirth, and this is what motivated them. And they have to deal with a ton of class barriers for them to actually like fulfill the title of a midwife. And then when you translate that to a city setting, you have the class just like amplified because then they're working underneath, the hierarchy of a hospital. So I feel that for us to really get to our ideal birthplace, we have a lot of politics that we need to like unearth and really address because I everybody deserves a safe care provider and no matter what class that they come from, no matter what religion, because that has a big actually impact in Pakistan as well, having done like flood relief and people not getting supplies because they are Hindus, like everybody, no matter who they are, deserves access to a trained and skilled care provider. And so it's how do we make that so that's a possibility for everybody, and good education, right? So even if they are doing a metric, you don't need midwifery, such a specific field that there is right now work is being done in Punjab that they're trying to make it a 4-year degree. You have Aga Khan University in Karachi. It's a 4-year degree, but unfortunately, these midwives aren't even allowed to attend births on their own. So even if you had it more of a degree based 4-year degree to compare to the 2-year, we still have a major issue in Pakistan that we don't see midwives as being able to be independent care providers, that even within these institutional settings they are not able to be autonomous or provide care. So unfortunately we have a lot of work to do, and it is intertwined with class is a huge thing in Pakistan. And yeah, hopefully our small efforts over our lifetime will be able to see a lot of ripples happening. But yeah, we have work to do.
And it's, I mean, the fact that Amina is thinking about it, you are thinking about it, I'm thinking about it. It's just this whole group of people that are ambitious and driven from passion. Inshallah, and with dua as well, prayers that we really, inshallah, will. I'm very hopeful. If not for myself, at least for my daughter-in-laws, I hope that they see a better birth world out there when their time comes, inshallah, inshallah. That's my thing. I think that's a beautiful note to end this beautiful talk. Thank you once again, Jahan, from taking precious time to be part of my talks. And it was always a thing that I wanted to have you, and I finally did. Uh, and I hope to see you one day as well. And we hope that one day you might
So
be
much.
coming back to Pakistan in better times, inshallah, inshallah.
Inshallah. Thank you so much for doing this, and thank you everybody for attending. We absolutely appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Jazakumullah khair. And I will, inshallah, see you guys next. Those of you coming to my workshop, I'll see you guys tomorrow at the breastfeeding workshop. Those of you joining my birth classes, I'll see you on the 7th of October. If you haven't yet so, please do. This episode will be uploaded if anyone wants to watch it. And then until next month, let's see who my next speaker is. I don't know yet. All right.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much, Adafis.
Wayakum. Lovely words coming in of thanks in the chat. Thank you, everyone that stuck till the end. Sorry for going above time, but you all know me. I can't stick to time. Thank you so much, Jahan. Take care, Habibti.
Bye, Adafis.
Allah Hafiz.